Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Today in War Thunder we're having a look at another hidden vehicle, the S.M.79 Sparviero bis /N1942. It's a bit of a mouthful, and also on top of that it's a frontline bomber, medium bomber and torpedo bomber as well. All three wonderful categories, rank 2, battle rating 3.0, and what you're getting for your, I suppose, bang for your buck is an SM-79 which isn't equipped with a torpedo. Now there is another SM-79 in the tree which is equipped with the torpedo. It's the T version that you see here, and it has exactly the same torpedo. Let's just make sure that it's the same in the Italian tree. Yep, the TM right here. So you can get a very similar Sparviero to this one if you have, if you are researching through the Italian tree, but this one is unique in itself. And what makes it unique? Well, the fact that it has a different name, and the fact that it has some quite powerful engines. So this one has some Alfa Romeo 126 RC34 9-cylinder radials with a max power of 820 horsepower, takeoff power 960. It also has access to war emergency power. Other stuff that we can have a look at on the X-ray is a very similar configuration of turrets as we saw before. We have the 12.7mm up here, the 12.7mm down bottom, and then we have some 7.7mm Vickers in waist guns, which for me don't seem to have that much of a use. On top of this, we also have some fuel tanks, self-sealing back here, so since this thing has no armor once again, hitting anywhere on it will puncture and do a lot of damage, and because of the engines being how they are, it's not exactly the easiest thing to keep in the air. It also keeps its offensive 12.7mm Breda Safar. Now there is actually a Sparviero which does not have this forward-firing 12.7mm, and it's the SM-79B that you can find for yourself in the Italian tech tree, and also in the German one if you were able to unlock it before. Another thing that makes this thing, I suppose, different is its camouflage. The fact that it has this very green/grey look with a little bit of, well, not rust, but a little bit of paint being taken off of it, which is nice. And also the fact that it has this torpedo. So the stats on this torpedo aren't the best. 0 to 301 kilometers an hour and 0 to 120 meters. This is still better than the British torpedoes. If you don't know which ones I'm talking about, all you have to do is go to, I believe the Wellington Mark III has them. Yes, as you can see, 0 to 281 and 0 to 105. So at least it's better than the it's better than the British torpedo, and this makes it a little bit more useful in the current state of the game, because obviously with naval forces just coming out, that means that torpedoes have a place in stuff which isn't just aerialistic on, let's say, a map like Norway. The other thing to also note is it has exactly the same bomb loads as before, so it has the 1250s, 12100s, so you start off with the 1250s, and getting those hundreds can be a bit of a pain. Once you get the hundreds, you get the 5250s and the 2500s. For me, once again, 5250s is your best option. The reason for this is because you can take out a base with them, where the 2500s, it's not as easy, especially now that you're at a higher BR than before. So since it is at a higher BR, I think it's always correct to look at the competition that it has in its own tree at said BR. So at 3.0 we have the HE-111H16, which has better defensive armament. It has a larger bomb load, but you could definitely say is slightly slower than the Sparviero, so at least it has that going for it. You have the BF-109E7U2, a rare gift premium from back in the days of the Thunder League. I believe this was one of the little prizes you could get out of the Thunder League, which was nice. It also came with a different camo, which is always good once it downloads. Let's just make sure, there we go. And then other things at 3.0, you have the E4, which was a BF-109 added after the E3 and the E1, were in the tree for a very long time, and that's about it, apart from also the BF-110 C7, which used to be, or at least used to have, a different name. So on top of this, if we want to run it at ground realistic, you have to run the Panzer III J1, the Stu 42, and you can even run this premium gift, well, not Puma, but SDKFZ 2344 if you have it. Also the Panzer 3N. So a 3.0 you can actually make a nice lineup. You also have the Marder 3H, which is a wonderful machine. So it's a lot more promising than the other Sparviero. The question is, do you take it over the other aircraft that I noted? And I think since this actually, has the pretty good bomb load, has a little bit of maneuverability around it. The question is, do you take it over the BF-110 C7? And I think the answer, unfortunately, is no, just because the C7 can defend itself a lot better than the SM-79 here. So even then, it's relegated to, I would say, second fiddle in ground forces. So in air forces, it loses out to the HE-111 H-16. In ground forces, it loses out to the BF-110. But in naval forces, well, it does have a torp. So at least that puts it, at least it has something to do in the game, which is good. So it's not just second fiddle. And that means that with further forts, it may actually be the front runner to run with your 3.0 lineup for Germany. And if you look at the 3.0 lineup in the fleet, you have the AFDs and also the VS-10. So you do have a lovely lineup for it. So this may actually see play in the future in a naval setting, which to me sounds wonderful. Anyway, let's get into some gameplay. So what are the main differences between this SM79, the BIS/N, and the Series 4 that we had a look at earlier? Well, the first main difference that you will definitely realize if you have this vehicle is the fact that its engines are much more powerful. They have 820 max power horsepower and 960 horsepower when it comes to its takeoff power. That's about half more than the Series 4. So you're basically adding on another half of an engine compared to what you had before. And you times this by 3, since there are 3 engines, you're pretty much talking about a machine which goes from a 3-engine beast to a 4.5 engine beast, showing that this has a hell of a lot more power, it's a hell of a lot more faster, can control itself a little bit better while also doing this. Another thing to also realize about this aircraft is the fact that it carries itself a torpedo, the F200 450. Now, this isn't actually that good of a torpedo. You're talking about max drop speed range of 300 kilometers an hour, and then the drop altitude range of 120 meters. It's not something that you really write home about. It's slightly better than some of the other torpedoes in games, such as some of the early British ones, but it's still nothing amazing. What is interesting though about it is it does give you that little flexibility, and it also means that now naval is out, it makes this Sparviero a little bit more of a nicer option. One of the issues when we look at it realistic though is, since its main difference is the fact that it has this torpedo, more powerful engines and also more emergency power, is, well, the torpedo's useless. The Sparviero hardly ever gets on a map which you would class as one which is good for killing naval targets. I mean, the only one I can really think of is Norway, and if you're on Norway, it's much better you take out a base, just because it does a lot more for you, and you don't put yourself in a vulnerable position. The problem with going down to those vulnerable positions, where the carriers are, or where the cruisers are, or where the smaller ships are, they can do a hell of a lot of damage to you really, really quickly, and also the enemy knows where you are. And since you're in a Sparviero, even in one with, larger engines, you're still not exactly one which is going through the air very, very quickly. So it's easy to take you out. One of the upgrades that this thing doesn't get, which would have been lovely to see, is armor protection. There is no armor on this machine, so once you get hit again. And it does feel heavier in the air. And this is something that should be stressed. So, since even though it has more powerful engines, and you can definitely feel that the acceleration is there, the actual maneuverability of the machine, and what I mean by that is the elevator, the rudder, the ailerons, how they respond to what's going on, it does not feel as good. as the other Sparvieros. It feels a lot more heavier, it feels a lot less reactive, and that obviously isn't good when you're trying to keep yourself alive. The fact that it has the same amount of gunners is nice, apart from it doesn't. And what do I mean by this? Well, you have the 12.7mm at the bottom, you have the 12.7mm at the top, and you have the waist gunners 12.7mm, but in my experience, the actual way that the top gunner fires, he actually has a slightly smaller arc of fire than the other one that you might be used to out of the other machines. Another thing to take into account is with the war emergency power, you can actually overheat these engines now, and since they have no liquid cooling on them, it is quite easy just to make them burst into flames, either when they're hit or when they're not. Another thing to also take into account is the slightly different fact that a lot of the fuel is near the center of the aircraft, so if you're trying to kill this thing, the best place to shoot, since it has no armor, is into the cockpit, and if you don't kill the pilots, well guess what, you either spring massive fuel leaks, you either hit an oil cooling system, or you hit the front engine. And the engines are exactly the same as the other Sparvieros. As I said, it's a lot of planes out there, B-17s, you can run them on 3 engines, right? It's not good for the B-17, but you know, you can get home. If you have 2 engines on the B-17, even if they're balanced, you can get home. You know, it's possible. The Sparviero needs its 3 engines. For some reason, if it doesn't have all 3 engines going, it just likes to fall out of the air. And it doesn't fall out of the air very gracefully, it normally plummets very, very quickly in speed, and therefore goes down. The web does help a little bit with this, but not a lot, so that is something to take into account. But overall, it's not a machine you want to get shot in. If we're talking about, is this better than the other Sparviero? Yes. The question is, at 3.0, is it viable? And at 3.0, you have the H-16, which is the HE-111, and it has way more bomb load. Absolutely way more bomb load than this thing, which makes a massive difference. The versatility isn't as good, I suppose, but even then, it is, because it gets 8 250s instead of 5 250s. And just if you go 0.3 higher, and you want to spend a bit of moolah, you get the BV-238, which is a monster at its tier. So, when we look at the practicalities of this thing, is it, you know, meta? No, it isn't. Is it fun to fly? Yes, I would say so. If you can get it on a map where torpedoes are actually useful. If not, well, you're just hitting a base and then trying to survive. And sometimes going after Wellingtons or going after other aircraft with your single 12.7, which can be fun as well. But anyway, hope you have enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next time.